Hello friends, today we are going to study on CFA, that is part 1 for fixed income securities. Okay, so as you're understanding with the name fixed, that means you're going to earn some kind of money for surety, that is for fixed, over a certain period of time. Okay. So here the most common type of fixed income security, which basically gives, what is the most common type of security? It is bond. So you could write here most common type of fixed security which is bond. Got the point? It is bond. Most common type of fixed security, it is bond. So bond basically promises to pay you fixed interest over a certain period of time. Okay, and also it promises to repay back your principal amount at the time of maturity. So there are two things to be noted down for bond. First one is that a series of interest payments in fixed amount or fixed percentage, you could say fixed amount or fixed percentage, both are same only. So basically fixed amount or fixed percentage. So it is a series of interest. So it is a series of interest payments in fixed amount or fixed percentage. Second part is that it repay back principal amount at the time of maturity. At the time of maturity. Okay. Now when the market rate, it is known as market interest rate. Interest rate is known as yield on bonds increases, the value of bonds decreases because present bond promised cash flow decreases as the higher discount rate is used. Got the point? So please write down this point. So whenever market interest rate increases, that means it increases. So when the market interest rate increases, okay, then the value of the bond, which is equal to value of bond, decreases. What a point? So it is basically increasing, other one is decreasing. And here you could say yield on bond also, yield on bonds. So market interest rate or yield on bond, both are same thing only. So it is, when it increases, definitely bond price decreases. Why it is so? Because the present value of the bond, promised cash flow decreases because when the interest rate is increasing, try to understand. This is the point where, say, let us suppose bond is giving 7%. Now another bond can be giving interest rate is giving 9%. So in 9%, if interest is higher, then the value of the bond, which was earlier 7%, it will give you less return. Okay, it will give you less return. That is the key point over here. So you could write down in the words that it happens because the present value of bond, present value bonds promised cash flow decreases when a higher discount rate is used. So what do you understand? Market interest rate on yield on the bond, which is inversely proportional. So I will write down here. So please write down all those things. Just pause the video and write down all those things. Okay. So here you could write one more point, that market interest rate decreases, no, market interest rate, or you could write yield on bond is inversely proportional. What it is? It is inversely proportional or opposite to value of bond. So please write down this point, it is very highly important, that the interest rate yield on bond, which is inversely proportional to the value of the bond. That means whenever this rises, it will decrease, when it rises, that will decrease. Okay. Bonds are rated based on their relative probability of default. So bonds are giving rating. So bonds are rated. Bonds are rated. Okay. On which ground it is rated? It is rated for that probability of default. Relative probability of default. Let us suppose there are 10 bonds over here, like that, A, B, C, D, or make it 4 bonds. Okay. Now, what is the probability that of A bond of failure, B bond of failure, C bond of failure, and D bond of failure? So we used to do the compare. We used to compare each and every one, and we will find the relative one, which one is better, which one is having the lower probability of default. That is known as relative probability of default. So default means non-repayment. Default you could say non-repayment. Basically, investors, I am using the word basically. Basically, investors prefer, it's investors' preference. Basically, investors prefer to invest money bonds which is having low default, or bonds which having lower default, bonds having lower default probability. Okay, those bonds which have the lower default probability basically gives low return on investment. And those bonds having higher default probability will give you the high return on investment. High return on investment. Got a point? That means high return on investment, that means high risk, which is equal to high risk. Low return means low risk. So these are the certain points. Please write down in your notebook. Now there is, if there is decrease in the bond rating, will decrease the price of the bond, thus increasing its yield. So I will write this point also. Now what does it says? That whenever there is decrease in bond rating, so bond rating is now decreased. So whenever the bond rating is decreased, means default rate increases or probability of default increase. That is probability of default increases, right? As there is decrease in bond rating, so probability of default of course increases. So it will give a direct impact on decrease in price of bond, which means increase in yield, increase in yield. That is the point. So if there is decrease in the bond rating, that means definitely there is increase in the probability of failure or default. So that means there will be decrease in the bond price, but the yield will increase. Okay. Now come to the features of fixed income security. Features of fixed income. So what are the features of the fixed income security? So features of fixed income security, it includes some kind of specification. Means include a specification of, it includes some kind of specification of, like issuer of the bond, who is going to issue, issuer of bond, like issuer of the bond, then maturity date of the bond, then par value. Par means principal value to be repaid. Last one is coupon rate and frequency. Okay, so basically these are the 4 specifications: issuer of the bond, maturity date of the bond, issuer means who is going to issue for the bond, maturity date of the bond, what is the maturity date, and par value date, principal value that is to be repaid, coupon rate and frequency. Okay, and one more thing, currency in which payment will be made. Currency in which payment will be made. Okay, what a point. Now coming to the issuers of bond, So basically there are several persons or several entities who are issuing. So we are going to study the several entities who are going to issue the bonds. So bond basically it means bond is a long-term debt. Okay, always remember bond is a long-term debt. Debt means loan or advances. So here those who are going to give the bond, basically they are borrowing the money. They are borrowing money from public. Got a point? Now the first one is corporations. So big companies or big corporations used to give these things. Basically big corporate companies, big corporate and high rated companies, high rated companies, they issue this type of bond. It is known as corporations. First one. Second one is of sovereign national government. So basically they issue government security, that is a GSEC, or you could write, if you want full form, it is of government security, or you could say T-bills, treasury bills. Then third one is non-sovereign government. So non-sovereign government means it is issued by government entities, but it are not national government such as your state government. It is a non-sovereign government means it is basically issued by state government. Simple logic. Not by like government of India or government of US. It is not like that. Or by any national government, If national government it is giving, it is known as sovereign. That's a sovereign national, it is non-sovereign. So basically it is issued by the state government only. Then quasi government entities. Quasi government entities. So it is not an obligation of a country's government or central bank. So it is not a direct obligation of a country's government or central bank. Example, Federal National Mortgage Association. So basically quasi-government, quasi means semi, So basically it is not a direct obligation of a country's government, or central bank. For example, Federal National Mortgage Association. That is known as Fannie Mae. Now, supranational entities. So it is issued by supranational entities. So it is issued by organizations that operate globally, such as World Bank, European Investment Bank, International Monetary Fund, like that. So it is known as supranational entities. So in case of supranational entities, it is issued by organizations that operate globally. Example: World Bank, IMF, International Monetary Fund, European Investment Bank, and so on. Okay, so like this way I'm just ending for today. So I'm just closing part 1. Next day we'll study part 2 also. So if you have come for the first time, okay, so please subscribe our video channel as well. Thank you.